Okay, so we are in chapter 2 in Qohelet, and verse verses 10 to 11. He says, "What I provided my body and my soul with whatever it wanted, and eventually I found out that nothing is worth it." In verse 12, ופניתי אני לראות חוכמה והוללות וסכלות, כי מי האדם שיבוא אחרי המלך את אשר כבר עשו. He said, I decided to immerse myself in understanding wisdom and madness and folly. Because if I do it, I think that's how I read the pasuk. כי מי האדם שיבוא אחרי המלך אשר כבר עשו. If the king did it, no one can do it better than the king. Meaning that he could take those things to the extreme. וראיתי אני, שיש יתרון לחוכמה מן הסכלות כיתרון האור מן החושך. The difference between wisdom and folly, wisdom and foolishness is analogous to the difference of light over darkness. So this analogy tells you that it's much better to be a wise person. Right? Why? The Chacham knows where he's going. The Ksil doesn't. The fool doesn't know when he's going. However, but I know that the same thing will happen to all. So in other words, he says, yes, you could do certain things better in your life, but eventually we're all going to die. Your wisdom will not save you. No, in Tedvav, ואמרתי אני בליבי, כמקרה הכסיל גם אני יקרני. ולמה חכמתי אני אז יותר, ודיברתי בליבי שגם זה הבל. And then he thinks to himself that with all my wisdom, I will die just like the fool. And so therefore my wisdom is also vanity. כי אין זיכרון לחכם עם הכסיל לעולם. The wise person will not be remembered, just like the fool. Now, I think we could argue that this is not true, right? People are remembered by their actions. At least if you study history, you know people's actions. But sometimes you are not. It's true. But sometimes you are not given the place they deserve in history. But I think that this concern of Qohelet here, how am I going to be remembered, is an essential factor in the way we live our lives. No, we always think of what is the impact that I'm going to make on the world, not necessarily in a positive way, not necessarily in a way that says I want to do something for others because I want to change the world, to leave it a little better than what I found it, but rather it's selfish. I want to be remembered. So I think that we could say that this is it's a positive force, right? God, the creator, evolution, you name it, instilled in us this need to be remembered, so we will do something for the world. So we will consider the consequence of our actions. We could say that guilt and shame are also related to that. But it also has a dark aspect. The dark aspect is that some people who want to be remembered, but realize that it is very hard to make a positive impact on the world, embark on a path of destruction. I think that when you think of tyrants and rulers who destroyed the world, we could say that some of them were sociopaths or psychopaths, but many of them had this or that they were megalomaniacs. But I think what the driving force for many of them was that they wanted to be remembered. They wanted to pretend that they could outlive death. They could cheat death because they will build magnificent castles that you want to walk by and say, many thousands of years later, right? For example, I'll give you, Misgad, um, the dome in Jerusalem in the old city, right? The which is called in Hebrew Misgad Omar, was not built by Omar. It was built by another Khalif, but he named it Misgad Omar, after him. And other towers and structures like that. Whoever built them wanted their name to be remembered for eternity, because we have this fear of being forgotten. Similar concept, Dia de los Muertos in Mexico. That's something that I learned. I mean, part of more of the culture, I admit, from the movie Coco. I thought it was a very good movie, even though originally I was reluctant to watch it. The idea that people are remembered by the stories their relatives tell about them, and when you stop telling stories about them, they disappear. So I think we're really concerned about this idea of how will people remember us.
Rabbi, have you read
Yes,
the book The Lonely Man of Faith by Rav Soloveitchik?
I think I read part of it.
So it goes, I think, to the crux of your point, in that it says basically any need to be remembered, any need about self or self glorification, whether that's through expressing your opinion or through doing something magnificent, discovering anything, all those needs, if they are not driven and motivated by service to God, are a kind of bastardization of religion. And he talks about it by saying God created two personalities for every human being. The first personality we see in Genesis chapter 1,
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
it's Elohim. He uses the name Elohim. He creates man in his image. He tells,
David, one second, stop. So I don't want to go. I don't want to go all the way to Bereshit. It's a different
oh,
story.
sorry. But
Yeah.
I guess my point is, isn't it true that um, any motivation that has to do with self-glorification could never be good? And in fact, the only good comes from the reluctant leader. Moshe, he didn't want to do it. King David, he was the reluctant leader, the forgotten child that was anointed. And if
Yeah.
you want to take it to an extreme, I think President Trump is a reluctant leader. Why? Because for 35 years, people were asking him, "Are you going to run for president?"
I
And
don't.
he said,
I don't want to
and
get into politics,
yeah,
David.
yeah, but I'm saying just the personality of the reluctant leader, which is to not want.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Okay, let me stop here, because then I got the point. But I have to tell you this. Listen. First of all, to put to say the name of Donald Trump in the same sentence with Moshe and David is, to me, sacrilegious. I don't think there's any comparison, um, because okay, and because we're clearly dealing with with narcissism and now obsession with oneself. The I have a problem with the Rabbi Soloveitchik in general. Even the title of his book, to me, is upsetting, uh, because I grew up with people of faith, and I mentioned this before. When I spoke about my grandfather, I thought he was really a man of faith. He was knowledgeable. He had deep faith. He cared about people. And I remember that when I first saw the book, before I even opened it, and I saw the title in Hebrew, David, it's called Isha Emunah Boded, right? The lonely man of faith. I thought that the author was messed up. And I'll tell you why. If you're a man of faith, you can't be alone. Someone who says, to say I'm a person of faith and I'm alone, is to look down at everyone around you. A person of faith knows that there are many out there with whom he or she can connect, and that there are many manifestations for faith. And I think that's where I differ from Rabbi Soloveitchik, and I don't see eye to eye on him on that idea that every action that is driven by self gratification is a bastardization of faith or religion. I disagree with him because it is the Creator who instilled in us this selfishness. And I spoke about it before, but I say everything we do in a way is selfish. There are different levels of selfishness, but the if we know how to harness it in a good way, everything is even when you give charity to a poor person, you could argue, no, that's selfish because I don't want to see this person suffering, right? Because it bothers me. I'm upset when that happens, so I want to quiet my consciousness, right? So if I do it in that way, I want to feel good, so I support other people. Is it bad? It's not bad because I ended up helping that person. I think that
I guess he's saying it's not bad. It's not ideal.
it's not
that
ideal, right? So here is the again, another problem of the Soloveitchik dynasty and their interpretation of halacha and Torah of Maimonides is that that everything has to be quantified and qualified, calibrated, if you wish, by strict rules, right? Just like when you do a mitzvah, what is the right way to do a mitzvah? How much matzah do I have to eat, right? So my grandfather's approach was just eat matzah, right? I remember as kids, we would, Saba, kama matzah, how much? It says, whatever you want. How much wine do we have to drink? As much as you need, right? But in the halachic mindset is, okay, what is the size of the matzah that I will eat that will satisfy the divine, right? So, but that is okay maybe when you speak about rituals, but when we talk about interpersonal relationships and how I help others, it's very difficult to say what is the ideal way, what is the and that it doesn't fall under the rubric of faith. But anyway, I hear that. I'm sorry if I it spun out into a more philosophical debate. It's just that I have my take also on the first stories of Bereshit and with Rabbi Soloveitchik. So let's go back to Qohelet. I just wanted to highlight this point of the obsession with memory. It's important for us because we exist. Let me say one more thing before I share the text. I think that we are obsessed with it. We're concerned about that because we understand that intuitively, maybe, that even though we talk about Olam Haba and the existence of the soul and all that, the only way, maybe this is uncertain. We don't know that we're going to live. We don't know what's going to happen in the world to come, which Qohelet is going to say. So where do we exist after our demise? Where do we exist? We exist in the memory of the people who knew us. That's why we feel so bad for someone who died lonely, without any relatives, any family, any friends. Like, who is going to remember that person? We speak about the anonymous soldiers, the anonymous victims of the Shoah. We build memorial structures and we do memorial services. The preservation of memory is extremely important for us because that's the preservation of our personality, of our existence on earth. So Qohelet, when he realizes that, he says, okay, who is going to remember me? What have I contributed to the world to be remembered? And because of that, he comes to the point in Pasuk Yud Zayin, V'saneti et ha'chayim ki ra' alay ha'ma'aseh shena'asa tachat ha'shamesh ki hakol hevel u'ut ruach. He got to the point that he hates life because everything he does under the sun is vanity, has no purpose. He says, why am I amassing such fortunes? Who is going to have them? Adam sheyeh acharai, someone will come after me. Umi yodea, hacham yeh o sachal, do I know whether he be wise or foolish? And he will take over all of my accumulated wealth. And he says, this is not good. This is not good. Kima, I'm skipping a couple of verses, and he says, En tov ba'adam, sheyochal v'shata v'yera et nafsho tov ba'amalo. You know what is good for you? Just enjoy life. Just eat, drink, and enjoy life. גם זו ראיתי אני כמיד האלוהימי, כי מי יאכל ומי יחוש חוץ ממני. Who else will eat and enjoy other than me? So it sounds hedonistic, like I just have to enjoy life. כי לאדם שטוב לפניו נתן חוכמה ודעת ושמחה, ולחוטא נתן עניין לאסוף ולכנוס, לתת לטוב לפני האלוהים, גם זה הבל ורעות רוח. He says, it's that a person for whom life is good, there is wisdom and knowledge and joy. And the sinner has a matter or an obsession with gathering and accumulating to put it as something good in front of God, and that also is vanity. So this is an enigmatic pasuk. It's hard to decipher exactly what Qohelet says here. Um, I have my theory, but I would love to hear if people have different interpretations.
Rabbi, is he in favor of minimalist style of life?
No, he says that there's no point of accumulating many possessions because what are you going to do with them? Who are you gathering them for? And he understands that he's not going to use all of them. He understands that that the fact that he was very wealthy is not going to make. Uh, we could go back and think of people. Who do you remember from famous people who lived 50, 100, 150 years ago? Who do we remember? Someone who was extremely wealthy. Do you remember that person was very, very wealthy? We usually don't remember that unless that person did significant actions with their money, in terms of charity or something in terms of oppression or obstruction of justice. But that person had to do something extraordinary with their wealth for us to remember them, and that's something part of what Qohelet is saying. But this to me is really a strange pasuk because he said previously that wisdom is not the purpose. So maybe I think my way to interpret it is that the word natan, because he repeats the word natan here, lahote natan, and latet letov lifnei Elohim, right? So there are two ways to understand that. One is that he focuses on the person. Ki le'adam shetov lefanav, a person who feels good about himself would also have wisdom and knowledge and joy. He would That person would be able to balance his life between the knowledge that he has and the joy that he has. Velahote, but the sinner, and maybe the word is not sinner. The word lahto in Hebrew comes from the same verb as lahti, which is to miss the point. If you're off the mark. It says your obsession is with gathering and accumulating, right? That is what you focus on, and it's not. You'll never be satisfied. Latet letov lifnei Elohim, but to say which of them is the one chosen by God, gamzeh v'lo ruach. The one person with each one of them can think that what he does is the best for God, but he says maybe that's not the point. Maybe you just have to enjoy and derive benefit from your life. But that's one way to understand it. The other way to understand it is this: that this whole thing that he says after the word ki are the arguments of people. He says because some people say that this is what is good and this is what is not good, and this is what God chose. It says gamzeh velo ruach. So he challenges other people who claim that. It's hard to decipher. Any suggestions? I'm open to hear.
Is
Well,
this
Rabbi,
basically a lesson on the laws of moderation?
But it's not clear. That's what Yoshua also asked if he's a minimalist, but I'm not sure that this is what he's saying. I don't know. Yedidia?
no, I was saying that to me, I was always taught that uh, that the that this is Shalom Ahamalek in his later years, and it's because of the way it's written. It sounds like someone who's experienced, someone
Mm-hmm.
who has affluence, someone who's reached a certain pinnacle of wisdom, and so i- to talk with such a level of experience, it sounds like this is someone who's lived their life, opposed to like when you look at the Shir Shiarim, where it's more of a younger man, more
Mm-hmm.
uh, opportunist, or more
Yeah.
open, more it seems like it's more welcoming. And then
Yeah.
when you come, so it seems like the years is broken up. So you have this, and then Mishle is like right in the middle somewhat. So it seems like it's just an aging. And if you look at if you read one Shir Sharim and then Mishlei, you come to here, then to the Qohelet, it's like, okay, now it's someone speaking from very much experience, and then it's saying it's all vanity.
Interesting. Yeah, and it's a possibility, but because you're talking from the point of view that Mishlei, Shira, Shirim, and Qohelet were all written by Shlomo, right? Which is the traditional view, which is possible. We don't know, but Shira Shirim, you're right. I just highlighted. So Shira Shirim deals with unfulfilled desires or plans. The whole Megillah revolves around the love of the girl and the beloved, Ani ledodi vedodi li. But when the moment comes and she can get him, she misses that moment. So it's unfulfilled aspirations. And that is something that people could feel at a young age. Now, and it seems right, like you're saying, Qohelet does come from an older vantage point. He already passed things in life. He did everything possible, and he's reflecting on his past. Whereas Mishlei is in between a collection of an anthology of pearls of wisdom. There are the paragraphs in Mishlei are usually much shorter than Qohelet. They are like bullet points, one-liners in many of them. However, there's something interesting in terms of the perspective of on life in terms of age. I'm trying to recall where did I read this? I read it recently. Maybe it's a book by Charles Duhigg, the one who wrote the Power of Habit, second book. I think it's called Smarter, Wiser, Stronger. He speaks of a study that was done with I don't know, actually not that book. I don't want to mislead you. It's a book about the use of language called The Secret Life of Pronouns. So, which is, I know it sounds a very strange name, but there was a linguistic study showing that the way people use pronouns is related to their age, gender, and many other things. And that's something that was started in the 80s. Now it is more, is based with big data and all that. But one of the things that the side things that I learned from this book is that they ask people to write about their life, about their aspirations, about their satisfaction with life. And they found out that younger people had a much more negative view of life than older people. So we would have thought, Qohelet at an old age looks back and says, nothing is worth it, I want to die, and what was the point of everything that I did? And that the young person, Shira Shirim, is still joyous and happy, and, Anira Dodi Vedodili, but it's actually sometimes the reverse, because at a young age, every obstacle seems to be the end of the world. I wanted to do this and it didn't work.
But I guess
experience.
Doesn't it depend on how you define young? I mean, a kid who's 5 years old and
No, I'm not talking about this age. I'm talking about the ages of between the teenagers and the 20s, the mid 20s, and then by comparison, the 60s to the 70s and up. And the thing is that people who had experience in life are able to better. I mean, if they're not, we're not talking about the extremes. Are when they assess their life's achievements and what they did, they look at it more positively. They tend to see the larger picture and to see what they were able to achieve. And I think what Qohelet eventually would lead us there, even though he speaks now in what sounds to be a very desperate voice, and that could be that in itself is part of the crisis that he went through in life that he shares here with us. In any way, I'm not going to claim that I understand fully this pasuk, the end of chapter 2.
Rabbi,
yes.
I have, well, just a thought. I mean, this whole paired process, it's a dialectical process, a teaching tool. So So perhaps it's not even intended to provide us with a bottom line or a final truth, but the intention itself is to raise the issue so that people can find the wisdom in the actual confrontation of the issues, which is certainly what we do with it.
Yes. Oh yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I can say he takes us on a tour, on a roller coaster, and brings up all these ideas. It's just that this specific pasuk, the structure is a little strange. There are other strange pasukim here, but I'm looking at the larger picture. But yeah, definitely what Israel, what you said is true with Qohelet. And this
Ra-
here we come to a very famous paragraph in Qohelet. There was even a song written about the this paragraph. Um, so לכל זמן ועד לכל חפץ תחת השמיים, to everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under the heaven. עת ללדת ועת למות. עת לטעת ועת לעקור נטוע. עת להרוג ועת לרפוא. עת לפרוץ ועת לבנות. עת לבכות ועת לשחוק. עת צפות, עת ריקוד. עת להשליך אבנים, עת כנוס אבנים. עת לחבוק, עת לאכול מחבק. עת לבקש ועת לאבד. עת לשמור, עת להשליך. עת לקרוע, עת לתפור. עת לחשות ועת לדבר. עת לאהוב ועת לשנוא. עת מלחמה ועת שלום. So I'm going to skip the word at time and just read what are the things that it says that there is a time for: to be born, to die, to plant, to pluck the planted, to kill, to heal, to break down, to build up, to weep, to laugh, to mourn, to dance, to cast away stone, to gather stones together, to embrace, to refrain from embracing. That's the coronavirus. To seek, to lose, to keep, to cast away, to rend, to saw, to keep silence, to speak, to love, to hate, for war, for peace. So, in first sight, okay, I will go back to the text in a second, right? If we divide, from what you remember, from what I read, like two columns, right? What would put, like, give a title to each column? What would they be? Like column A, column B.
Positive, negative.
Right? It seems like it goes along the positive. So let's look at the text, right?
Not really, though.
Yeah. Vivian?
I got kind of stuck
Oh,
on
Shayna,
a couple verses before when it said was talking about the food and the drink, and it said this
Yeah.
also is from the Yad of Hashem. So
Yeah.
are we to look at this as a separate thing from where he was a couple verses before, or is he continuing in this thought?
I don't know.
Because if he's continuing in that thought, then I don't see these as negatives, positive. I just see that life is a mixed bowl.
Okay, so let's look at the columns.
That's how
What?
I took it. That's how I took it. That he's actually summarizing all of life, and you
Okay.
have it mixed. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so it's a mixed bowl. Okay.
As beginnings and endings. The
Beginnings and endings, interesting also. Beginning and ending. So not necessarily positive. So let's see. Let's look at the list. And from those by the way, wait, before I go there, you know that is the way we catalog and categorize things is a very interesting way to look, you know, to understand people's and their thought processes. It's a good icebreaker. It's a good social game. You could get 20 or 30 different objects, little objects, household objects, put them on the table, and ask people, give each one a notebook, and ask them to group them. And you will be surprised. What you think the group is, you know, so clearly those are, let's say, kitchen items, and those are, you know, grooming items. And then someone say sort them by color, and another one by their size or by the material they made of, or you know, there are many ways to sort out things. So when we see that this kind of poetic text written in columns, we try to figure out how is it cataloged, right? How is it sorted out? So let's see. So this is the positive sign, right? Laledet. So to be born, to plant, to kill, to break down, to weep, to break down a wall, by the way, to weep, to mourn, to cast away stone, to embrace, to seek, to keep, to rend clothes, to keep silence, to love, and time for war. On the other side, it's time that what we thought was the negative, right? To die, to pluck the planted, to heal, to build up, to laugh, to dance, gather stones, refrain from embracing, lose, cast away, saw, speak, hate, peace. So does this work? The negative, positive? Not necessarily. Okay, let's see now if it works with the beginning and ending. Okay, so to be born, beginning, to die is the end. Latat is the beginning, growth. To plant, to pluck the planted is the end of the tree. Et laharog ve'et lirpo. To kill, there's another beginning. Okay, that's one odd out, and to heal. To break down, right? Or it's reverse, right? You can heal someone, that's the beginning, and right. Et lifroz ve'et livnot, to build or to break that which is built, also reverse, but also there are two ends, right? Et livkot ve'et lishok, those cannot fall really under the category because sometimes we need to cry, sometimes we need to laugh. Mourn, dance. So beginning and end could work, but also not perfectly and not symmetrically. So maybe, like Shayna and Vivian said, this is deliberately asymmetric to tell you not necessarily your life will be good, bad, good, bad, good, bad. It could be a succession of bad things and a succession of good things, and then maybe a mix of all. This verse, Et livkot ve'et lishok, et zefot ve'et rekod, when he says a time to mourn and a time to dance, then the time to weep and time to laugh are different than mourning. We're not talking about crying as to mourn. And I'm sorry for, I didn't plan that. I didn't mean to cite children's movies, but this pasuk, there's a time to cry and a time to laugh. Reminds me of a Inside. It's called Inside. No, not Inside Out. The Disney movie. Is it called Inside Out? Have anyone watched this movie? No. Like the characters in the girl's brain.
Yeah, it's correct, Rabbi. It's called Inside Out.
Inside Out. So if you didn't watch the movie, and you have children in your life, go watch it. But even if you don't, I watched it with my two daughters. One, which the older of them at the time I think was 22, and she was crying at the movie. It speaks sort of like at a certain point about growing older and casting away old memories. It's beautifully done. But one, and I don't want to spoil it for you if you didn't watch it. But one of the points of the movie, they identify 5 major emotions: anger, disgust, joy, what else? Sadness, and fear. Fear, sadness, joy, anger, and disgust. And they show how all of them are important. So really, I think it was beautifully done. And I think this is something that I read here in the lines of Qohelet. And I think that not only, and that's what I want to see, not only there is it's a mixed bowl, there's also ambiguity. Certain things here we could say are absolutes, right? For example, you would say, I would say that et lirpo is absolute, right? You don't want someone to be sick. You want them to be healed. Et laharog is it absolute that it's definitely wrong that you don't want to kill, or sometimes you have to when you're attacked, or that even though it is justified, you need to think about what brought you to the situation. Why is there crime in the world, and that's negative. But
sometimes even when you're not attacked, it's a mitzvah to kill. I mean, look at Hitler. Imagine someone not being attacked by Hitler, but planning to kill him.
No, that Hitler is definitely attacking the whole world. Is a threat to the whole world. But yeah, but let's look at verse 5. Et lashlich avanim ve'et knos avanim. Right? What is a necessity? Can we say that something is absolutely good and something is not? We're not even clear of what is lahashlich avanim and knos avanim. Am I throwing stones away? I'm casting them away from my field in order to plow, to make room for something. And am I gathering the stones to build a wall or to stone someone to death? We don't really know what was the purpose, right?
What if it's gathering material things? Like
Right.
he comes to the end where he says, what is it?
Right. So
It's almost
Maybe he's saying,
yeah, go ahead.
I felt like I interrupted. Were you done, Vivian?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So Vivian was saying, yeah.
The thought just came to me. Maybe he's saying that life is not logical and there are no certainties in life. Because if we take that from these pairs of things, and then we go back up to the verse that we had trouble with, 26, and instead of reading it like I've always seen the commentaries read it, is basically that if you're good, if you do the things Hashem wants, then you're going to have wisdom and joy and all those things. And then these people who are in the chet category, they are they just get to amass this wealth that then they lose. That's how it's generally been explained to me.
Yeah.
But then he goes on and says, Gamze hevel.
That's the problem. You're right, Shayna. The first half of the pasuk, if the pasuk would have ended here without those words, I would understand it. You say, oh, you know what? This is here. I'll highlight in English. No, for to the man that is good in his sight, he gives wisdom and knowledge and joy, but to the sinner he gives the task to gather and heap up. Beautiful. That's very clear. But then he adds that he may leave to him is good in the sight of God. This also is vanity. So this like sort of destroys everything. And
so he says it's not always true. It's not always true. Life is not always logical, and the wealthy person is not always the one who's doing the chet. And the person who has joy and wisdom is maybe not always the one who's walking straight in the path of Hashem either. And so maybe that's his whole message, is like, don't try to categorize everything, because you're going to lose your mind if you try to do that.
Right. So take, for example, this et laledet ve'et lamut, right? A time to be born and a time to die. In today, I mean, maybe he didn't mean that, but in today's reality, that could apply to the same person. The same fetus on the brink of being born, and the parents find out that this fetus has a fatal deficiency. Is it better for this baby to be born into the world and live shortly and then die, or to die before being born? Who are we to say?
This way of looking at it supports the fact that this is an older person. Because I'm getting older and I'm starting to look at the world more that way. Like, oh, these black and white views I had, they're not black and white. And really, I'm more confused than ever.
I think is that part of the point, though? I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
Go ahead, David. Yeah.
The lady's name. Sorry, she just made a good comment.
Vivian.
Vivian. Shayna, sorry. Is that the point that just follow God's way as best as you can understand it, and don't worry about the consequences, meaning whether you benefit from it or lose from it materially, God forbid, or physically or whatever, that's not the point. The point is not the end result. The point is the process. Be committed to the process. And if you're going to start thinking about the end result, you're going to lose your mind, because because it's not necessarily a logical equation.
So
I would like to take that a little bit further. Eduardo, I would say also, yes, this is life and this is what we go through. We do all these things, but try to keep in mind as much as you can the absolute essence. What is really when your days are over, and in fact, I mean, you probably spoke, Rabbi, to many people in their 70s, 80s, and later. I think you'll find very few who would say, oh, I'm completely happy with everything I've done in my life and everything is great. No, everyone would say, oh, I should have probably done a little more of this. And this has nothing to do with wealth, with this, with that. You know, it has to do with the essence of what is Judaism, actually, right?
Right. So I think, to add to this, we spoke about the fact that the journey is important, that you have to enjoy and appreciate the journey, but also maybe that, and David, this is answering your question, and that's why I brought before logotherapy, that the purpose of life is not to look at the end result of like, God willing, I'm going to live to be 88 like my father when he passed away. This is what I want to achieve to look back when I'm 88. But rather, at this point in life, what is my project? What is something that I want to embark on? And for me personally, I look back right now. I'm about to launch a rabbinical school, and hopefully, some of you are going to participate in it, and it's a big undertaking. This particular model that I'm doing has been in the talks for 2 years. The more general idea was in the talks for 5 years. But I look back in my life, I recall that I actually tried to do it when I lived in Bogota, Colombia, and I was maybe 28, 29 years old. It didn't work back then, but that's something that always has been on my mind. And so I could say that I had a certain theme that, that ran through my life, that this is something that I wanted to do. And during time, there were many different smaller projects, necessities, adversaries, a lot of other adventures that took me here and there. But I didn't think, 25 or 30 years ago, that's what I'm going to do when I'll be in my 50s, right? But I had an idea of what I want to do in general, and things, some things fell into place, some things fell out of place. So I think that's what I read in the first pasuk of this paragraph, which is very powerful. What he says is lakol zman, right? Everything has a time. Ve'ed lechol hefetz tachat hashamayim. So they translate hefetz as purpose. Hefetz in Hebrew really mean want or desire. So even there's a specific time to want what you want and to achieve what you have to achieve. Because in your life, you will have all these things happening. The people will be born and people will die, and you have to, when think, for example, about mourning, when we lose someone who's dear to us, the whole world stops. All of our plans are cast away. Like I commented as I was reading, there's a time to hug and time to refrain from hugging. That what happened to us now threw the whole world into chaos. We don't know what's going on, right? So it forces people to recalibrate and to think and to consider their zman, their hefetz, and where this leads. So I think we'll leave it at that for today with this paragraph, and Be'ezrat Hashem will continue next Sunday with your thoughts, with your comments. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And